Hi, this video is an overview of my latest plugin called OSnap. OSnap is a drum sound generator. It uses layers playing together through a master section to create a sound. There are 5 different types of layers at the moment. Some of them use samples to generate sound, while some do it on their own using different synthesis techniques. Let's take a look at the UI. So here we see the stacked layers. Let's focus on this one. So a layer is made of 3 sections. In the left section you'll find the header, which contains an individual preview button. Then to the right, under the engine tabs, you'll find parameters controlling the engine itself. Under the amp tab, there are controls for its volume envelope. Then there's the middle section, which we call the display. The display can show different signal representations. It can show dedicated engine views like for the sampler, the granular, or the carpless. It can also show the volume envelope when the amp tab is clicked. And finally, it can display the EQ view when you click the EQ tab here. Then this section on the right here, which is common to every layers, contains the main parameters of the layer. So output volume, panning, and start delay. This is an important one. It shifts the start point of the layer in time, and you'll see why it's important in a moment. There is also a dedicated drive, effects, and EQ section. And finally, at the very right of the layer, you can find the fold button here. Note that you can also fold and unfold the layer by double-clicking on its title here. Then under the fold button you'll find an erase button, a save button, and a solo and a mute. You can move layers around by drag and dropping them from this left section. So if you want to change the order. Now we're going to be talking about sync points. So each layer uses a sync point, which is represented on its display with this icon here, which you can find on every presentation. This sync point can be used by OSnap to align every layer in times by constantly updating their start delay parameters. So here, for instance, you can see that every sync point is aligned. And this one, which is set to be the end of the attack phase, if I increase the attack time, you will see that every layer gets offsetted in time using these start delay values. Let's get back to the original value. As I said, the sync point here is set to be the end of the attack phase, but you could choose it to be any point in the volume envelope you'd like. You would just have to go to the point which you want to set as the sync point, right-click it, and click Align to this point. And that way you see that every layer is now aligned at the end of the release phase. Let's set this back to the end of the attack phase. Some layers, like the sampler, the granular, or the carpless, use what we call a custom sync point. So here, for instance, you can see that the sync point is located on the sampler waveform itself. We could change this, as I just showed you, by clicking a point on the volume envelope here and set it like that. And if we wanted to set it back to the impact point of the sample itself, we would just have to go back to the engine view and right-click this point here and align to this sample's impact point. Every sample in OSnap carries an impact time information, corresponding to the main peak of the sample most of the time. By default, samplers are aligned to this point, which is called a custom sync point. If you don't want this auto-aligning behavior to happen, you can disable it by toggling this button here. We're gonna keep it on for now. And note that it's on by default. You can access various functions by right-clicking the layer in its left section here. I'll explain some of them. So the reset choice here resets all the values of the layer to default values. The save choice here is the equivalent of clicking this button there, and I'll show you what it's about in a minute. The align impact function sets the start delay of only this layer to match the main impact of every sound in the rack. And one handy thing here is this field at the bottom, which shows the prefix of the parameter name exposed to your DAW. So it can be handy when you want to automate a parameter and you don't know which one to pick between all the available choices. So let's say if you wanted to automate this pitch control, you right-click the layer, see that this layer is using the sampler 0 prefix, and that way you would know that this pitch control here responds to sampler 0 pitch, this value here. Now let's go from top to bottom here in the UI and explain each component of the interface. At the very top here, you've got the MNE and OSnap logo, which you can click to reveal the OSnap version you're using. Then you have the undo and redo and the settings wheel button, which I will explain later. Under this, you'll find a general play button, which will basically play the whole rack. Then the preset browsing controls, which allow you to go back and forth between presets. This is where you need to click to show all the presets. Again, I will explain you in a bit what this is all about. You then have the current duration of your sound, the square view, which is another way to represent each sound currently loaded in the rack. Then you have this button here, which allows you to start with an empty rack and some default values for the master section. So if you wanted to start from new, you would click this, and then it would basically reset everything. Then here you've got the save preset button. When you're happy with the sound you got and you want to save it, you just click there, enter a name, give it a few tags. You can use some custom tags here. Once you're happy with this, you just click save and your preset is saved. And finally here you've got the export section. So one really cool feature of OSnap is its export function. So if you're happy with your current sound and you want to export it to an audio file, at any time you can simply click this. You can either drag this outside of OSnap, like in your DAW for instance. As you can see, we've got our waveform here. Or you could drag this directly into OSnap and have some kind of a render in place behavior. This is the window when you want to add in a user sample, and I will talk about this in a minute. Also note that you could disable the master section by toggling this button here, if you wanted to export only the dry sounds without any master processing. Then under this bar here, we have the timeline. It is a time representation of your current rack. The white lines here represent the sync point of every layer. So you can see here that they're all aligned in time. That's how we get this single impact result. You could drag and drop these elements to shift them in time like this. You can double click it to align it automatically with the main impact of the rack. Up there, we've got the auto-align impacts, which we talked about earlier, which enables this behavior where whatever you do on a layer, the other layer always adjusts their start delay so that all the sync points are always in time. Next to this toggle is the Align Everything button. You'll notice that if some sync points are not aligned, you will see this one flash. So basically here, if we offset a couple of layers, we can just click this one and they will all get synced again. And note that having this toggled on is basically the equivalent of clicking this button each time you perform a modification on a layer. And last thing in a timeline, you can fold it using this button or by single clicking on the header. So under this we've got the rack, which we already talked about. Under the rack we have the master section, so it contains controls for the master effects. They are arranged under tabs, like in the right section of the layers. This is a global volume envelope, which can be handy if you want, let's say, to only keep the initial part of your sound. Let's say you could reduce this, add a bit of release, and now you would have only the first seconds of the sound. Let's put it back to where it was, so we get the whole sound. Again, like the timeline, you can fold the master section by clicking the fold button here or by clicking the header. So that's it for this part of the UI. What you're seeing now is the big organic kick, which is a preset which comes with OSnap. A preset contains both the sounds and the settings for the master section. If you wanted to browse the presets, you could click here on the preset name. That will open the preset browser, and in here you can preview a preset by just clicking it. And then if you want, you can browse all the presets using your keyboard's arrows. Once you find a preset you like, you can load it by clicking load here. You have a tag system and a text search to narrow down your research if you want. You can clear everything you've entered by clicking the clear tags button here. You can also sort the presets using different methods. On the right here, you have the preview panel, which shows various information on the preset, like the tags it has, its name, and the contained items, and also the master parameters associated with it. For user presets, you'll find the edit button here, which allows you to change its name and the associated tags. You could also create copies of the presets by clicking those buttons here. That's it for the presets. Let's talk about the library. We do want to start from 0, so we're going to click here. And in the library here, you'll find two types of items, samples and sounds. You can browse those elements together by clicking the All tab here, or you can browse them separately by clicking those tabs here. So let's talk about samples. First, you can see that they appear in a gray color. These cannot be used on their own, they have to be loaded inside an engine. So when you click one, you will see down there the engines it can be added in. If you click an engine like this, you will have the preview of the sample through this engine. If this combination of sample and engine is what you're looking for, you can click the Add button and it will be added to the rack. If we go back here and select granular and click Add, you'll see that the Kitschmisk sample gets added with the corresponding engine. Let's start from new again. You could also double-click the sample here and it would get added to the rack using the currently selected engine, like this. Then let's talk about sounds. Let's go into the Sounds tab. So a sound is basically a saved version of a layer. Let's say if I wanted to keep this sound and save it to the library, I would click there, give it a name, a brief description using tags, then I would save it, and you could then find your sound here, displayed with a user icon here again. So that's what a sound is. It's basically a layer preset, if you will. You can browse them the same way as you browse a sample, just by clicking it. This time you won't have the engine button since an engine is already associated with it. That's why the sounds are colored. They're painted in the color of the engine they use. And again, you can add a sound to the rack by double-clicking it or clicking the Add button here. As for the preset, you can specify your search using text here, and you have a tag system there. As you narrow down your research, you can see the number of items matching your search updating inside the tabs here. You can clean both the text search and the selected tag by clicking the Clear Tags button here. You can also hide the tags by toggling this thing here. And notice that when you're browsing sounds, you have these engine selectors here, which get disabled when you're only browsing samples. And these are handy if you only want some specific engine to show up in the library. You can also display the items as a small square form or a larger one using these toggles here. As for the preset, you can sort these items using different methods. Note that you have a handy random one. And below all this, you have a section which is called the combinator. This one is a big one. It automatically creates combinations of sounds based on your current engine and tag selection. As for the items here, you can simply click a combination to preview it. You can select how many sounds are in each combination by using these buttons there. If you don't like the combinations currently suggested, you can just click the Regenerate button. And again, once you find a combination you like, you can double-click it to add it to the rack like this, or you can use the Add button here. So I already talked to you about those user items. Let's browse them like this. They're the ones which show up with this user icon. So if you wanted to import your own sample inside OSnap and have it as an item like this, you would have to go back to the rack view like this, go to your system browser and drag and drop it inside the rack like this. At this point, you could give it a name. And the really important thing to do here would be to set its impact point using this cursor. You could use the zoom in function to be more precise. Let's pick this one. You could also pick some tags here in order to retrieve the sample using the tag system. And then you would hit save. At this point, it would suggest you to add the sample directly into the rack. So you could pick the engine you want and then click add. And it would add the sample inside the granular engine. And you would then be able to find your sample here. Okay, last thing in the library, and it's something which the preset browser already have, is the preview panel here. So it displays various information based on the kind of item you're previewing, sample or sound. And note that it contains a master effects toggle in the top right corner here. This tells if the audio of the previewed item should be affected by the current master section or not. This can be handy if you have a lot of processing going on in your master section, but you would like to preview a dry version of an item. And that's it for the library panel. One last thing is the settings menu here. In there, you'll be able to toggle on or off the mighty sync impact to MIDI function, which there will soon be a video on. And you can also access some more settings there. So that's it for this video. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Well done if you made it so far. Subscribe to this channel if you like this kind of content, because there is more coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.